Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Northwestern Adventures. I am your host, Taya Bray.
And I'm Maddie Miller.
And today we'll be talking to you a little bit about Northern Ireland, just about tours, places you can visit, just recommended areas that we want you guys to travel with. So, Maddie, can you give us our fun fact for today's episode?
Yeah. So our fun fact is that the Titanic's last stop was in Cove, Ireland, and that you can still visit the ticket office where the last passengers boarded and disembarked the Titanic before it took off and didn't make it back. But one of the cool things is that there was a photographer that was on the boat and he got off in Cove. And because he got off in Cove, it is because of that we have many of the pictures of the Titanic that we have today. It was because he was on there and he got off in Cove instead of staying on.
Wow, that's really interesting. Thank you for that, Maddie. Now it's still super weird to figure out that Maddie has never seen the movie Titanic, although she's researched a bunch of random historical facts about the Titanic. I still won't understand.
A Night to Remember is more historically accurate.
That is true. That is true. I'll give her that.
All right, let's talk about tours because there's a lot of different options of what to do in Ireland. So if you were to go to Ireland and pick a tour, what would appeal to you? Because there's tours to go to whiskey, on pubs. They're really fond of their Guinness over there. There's Viking tours where you can get in a car, a boat that drives, but also drives into the bay where you can go in the water as well as on land. And there's just natural resource tours where you can hike around, or there's bus tours around the cities. What kind of thing would appeal to you?
Well, for me personally, I love hiking. So if I were to get an opportunity to hike up a really steep hill or jog or something like that, I love doing that. That's just that's a passion I do personally have. Would you recommend a place in Ireland?
I think probably the Cliffs of Moher would be good. Those are really pretty. And there's the Giant's Causeway has a lot of places you can hike around. Also, the Aran Islands are really fun to just explore. They're not so much hilly, but there you can just rent a bike for a day and literally bike around the entire island for a day, and it's a really fun.
That's beautiful.
To do that.
Yeah. So the island, how coastal is it? Because I also love coastal. I'll run on the beach. So it's right off of the west coast of Ireland, I believe, central west. There's 3 islands, but the Inishmore is the only one that I think tourists are actually allowed to go to. And it's very small. You can get bus tours around Ireland's island.
Yes.
Can you say that 10 times fast?
No. And so you can get bus tours. You can also rent bikes. They have the battery powered ones to help you, or you can just, be athletic and cool and actually pedal around. There's also beaches and stuff off there, and there's tons of sheep farms, and it's just really quaint. So
it's really what?
Quaint.
Quaint. I heard coin. It's very coin.
Quaint.
Nice. Okay. Where would I go if I wanted to be filled with a bunch of greenery and just sightsee a bunch of freshly green plants, and I want to smell I want to smell the dirt and the environment, and where would I go to basically what could be a good camping site if I were to go to Ireland?
The thing is that in Europe, it's not it's so small that driving somewhere and staying for a couple of nights and camping is not, I don't think it's as a big a thing as it is here. Whereas it would be more driving there, hiking, and then driving back, because it's just not that far. Because in our last episode when we talked about Dublin and day trips, we mentioned the Giants. We mentioned the Giant's Causeway, And it's like a 2-hour drive.
Watch that episode.
Yes, watch our last episode for like Dublin and day trips outside Dublin. But one of the things we mentioned was the Giant's Causeway, and it was like a 2-hour drive from Dublin. And Dublin is like eastern central in Republic of Ireland, and the Giant's Causeway is basically at the top of Northern Ireland. So Ireland is very small, so you can easily hit multiple places in a short amount of time. I thought it would be cool to touch on Belfast, Londonderry, and Downpatrick, because Belfast is where the Titanic was built. And since we talked about the Titanic taking off from Cove as its last stop, I just found it fascinating that, like, I had forgotten that the Titanic was built in Ireland. And then I was like, wait a sec. It was literally built in Belfast. And we drove past, when we were on our trip, we drove past, like, the port where they, like, built it and, like, sent it off on its maiden voyage. So I found that interesting. Belfast is also the capital of Northern Ireland. And I think Belfast shows the difference between, like, Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland in that it is predominantly more Protestant, even if it's greatly secularized now. It was at time more Protestant, whereas the Republic of Ireland is more heavily Catholic. So Belfast, it's another city, probably similar to Dublin in some respects, of just like fun food and shops, and also like Titanic history if you're into that.
That's really cool. So that's just a little bit of two on Belfast. Can you tell us a little bit about Londonderry? Because before, when I was looking it up, I looked it up as Londonderry. There's no such thing as Londonderry, so don't look it up, because I did.
Yeah, Londonderry is the only walled city that we're in Europe where the walls are still completely standing. We were able to walk the entire city wall, and the walls are not like, walled cities are very foreign to us in America. We don't have walled cities. So being able to walk on the walls of a city was an experience. And it was so cool because they're so wide, and like there's, how many gates are there? I want to say there's at least 4, maybe 5 gates. And that's significant because one of the major things that happened is that Londonderry was put under siege, and there were 13 young boys. They're called the Derry Boys, the Apprentice Boys, and they went around and shut all the gates of the city when they saw the armies approaching, when everybody else was just going to give up. So that's an important fact about Londonderry and like the walls. And also Londonderry is kind of like on the border between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. And so it's like a lot of like Protestant Catholic tension happen in there. And so the Derry Boys, it has now become like a sort of society thing that guys can join. And there's chapters all over the world now where they basically help with like religious tension. Having not been there, do you think like Belfast or Londonderry would appeal to you more as like a tourist who's just gonna go walk around in more of the cities and not so much the countryside?
I love both, honestly. Both of them sound really interesting, but I do have to say Belfast would be like a cool place to go and just like see like the historical monuments and just kind of get a glimpse of like, what was it like in the past, and you can really just kind of like put like the puzzle pieces together that way, and it just makes you learn a little bit more about like what's so significant about our history.
There's one more place in Northern Ireland that I thought was really interesting, and that was Downpatrick. And that is because it is the supposed burial of St. Patrick.
Wait, wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, would you like to expand?
Basically, there's literally almost any cathedral in any town in Ireland is named after St. Patrick.
Oh,
But the significance of Downpatrick in Northern Ireland, that specific church, is that there is a grave there that they believe is where St. Patrick is actually buried.
oh, okay. So like everything is like something Patrick over in Ireland, basically.
They love St. Patrick, as you might expect. I mean,
there is a whole holiday in America that's like St. Patrick, and everything's green.
but that's a really cool place if you're like, they have a really neat Celtic cross up in front and a little gift shop, and you can get a tour of the church while they're talk about St. Patrick and his significance, and there's some really pretty stained glass as well. So
I know stained glass can be beautiful.
yeah,
Like all those churches with the stained glass, like I don't know, I think that just makes it look like more colorful.
you have never traveled abroad,
Never
and
been outside America.
and I went to Canada a few years ago, but like as far as like major overseas travel, like doing Ireland, and we also went to Scotland, was like the first major overseas travel. What do you think would be some benefits to traveling abroad? Like, I feel like as Americans, we get stuck in like the US. Like the US is huge and we're so culturally diverse, and that we just don't see as big of a need to go abroad. I feel like for most Americans. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah. Well, someone who's more on like the right wing conservative aisle of the political spectrum, I'd say if I were to travel abroad, I think it'd make me appreciate the U.S. a little bit more. Not just because we're finding fault in all of the other countries, but also we get to gain a little bit more perspective as a whole. I think we all need to be open-minded, politically, spiritually. Spiritually because at the same time, we want to be careful with what we do let in. But at the same time, it's another way to appreciate and thank the Lord, just for the stuff that we do have, the information that we do get. Because, like not everyone has the same luxuries that we do as Americans. Not everyone has the same privileges that we do. And we get to live in a free country where we can worship the Lord freely and not get persecuted for our beliefs. Even though I think like both ends of the political spectrum love to tease that like, oh, we don't have as much freedom as that like we could have. They're right. But at the same time, it's always good to just come back and appreciate like what we do have, in this country.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Our ancestors were both, I assume, fought for our rights, as Americans. And so we just like to take some time to appreciate that.
So you've been on vacation.
I have been on vacation.
And I've been on vacation. What are some ways that like you like to remember a vacation? Like, are you, cause like my mom, she buys fridgies. Everywhere we go, there is a magnet on our refrigerator where we have been. How, like, what is your family? How do you remember trips? Because you go on a big trip and then you come home and it's all a blur and you can't remember what happened on what day. Let's talk about some ideas to like help listeners remember their trip in a special way.
I so agree with that. Take lots and lots of pictures, I'd say, just because, and also like if you were to go back, kind of have a traditional place to go to, because then if you always go to the same spot, you'll always get like the best memories. Maybe, oh my goodness, if you go to a place where it's like, you always get a bad experience there, probably don't go there. You'll always remember it, But like, I guess for me, like, me and my family love Newport Beach. We love it because we have so many fond memories there, just as a family, and we kind of have like all of those. And like, what they say, like whatever stays or like whatever happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Yeah. For me, it's whatever happens in Newport stays in Newport, and it's a lot of fun. We're planning on going back this summer, and just can't wait to go back and Shout out to my mom.
Yeah. I think something that was like helpful on our trip, because that was like one of our first major trips. I mean, well, we've done major like road trips, but like overseas trip is I journaled our entire trip and I saved all of our
Oh.
tickets. I journaled like every day. This was from the Titanic experience in Cove that we mentioned. So it's just a lot of I kept our tickets to different things. I kept plane tickets as well, just so I could remember what happened on what day. But there's other ways of doing it. My mom likes Friggies. Take pictures. There's also cool photo book options and intentional souvenirs. I would think, because like you can buy stuff at the gift shops, but like I don't know. I feel like if you buy a bunch of cheap stuff, then it's just gonna like be worthless by the end. So
I agree.
And with all that said, we'd like to thank you for listening to another episode of Northwestern Adventures. I am Maddie.
And I'm Taya Bray.
Make sure you like and subscribe so you can see more of our episodes. And be sure to leave comments and let us know what you think and where you would like to visit in Ireland.